walking side by side. The truth is gonna set us free. The truth is gonna be our guide. Oh, we shall overcome. We shall overcome someday. The truth is gonna set us free. The truth is gonna be our guide. Oh, we shall overcome. We shall overcome someday.
Hey y'all, what's up? What's up? What's up? It's your girl Golden. I'm back with another live today, y'all. It is Monday, okay? So it's January 19th, 2026. Y'all know that. It's about 12:08 p.m. here. I'm sorry, 12:08 p.m. here Eastern Time in the Carolinas, and it is Martin Luther King Jr. Day. So I figured, what other better day than to do a tribute to Martin Luther King Jr. So I did put together a video, y'all, that I wanted to show you guys to honor his memory and talk a little bit about, their history. I don't know if everybody knows, everybody may not. We get bits and pieces, but we'll get into a little bit of all of that today, okay? I am so glad that you're here with me on this MLK Day. We aren't just here to look at a statue or post a quote on social media. We're here to listen to the real Dr. King, the revolutionary, the strategist, and the man who wasn't afraid to call out the system of power. Today, I'm going to be taking us through 5 of his most legendary orations. We're going to hear his voice, read his words, and see how they map directly onto what we are actually dealing with right here in 2026. This isn't just history, it's a manual for the struggle we are in right now. We'll get into the power of words. Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. delivered hundreds of speeches during his life, but the 5 we're discussing today were widely regarded as his most powerful and influential. He used his words as a tactical weapon for justice, mastering the art of pathetic rhetoric. He took the highest ideals of the American Constitution and held them up to a nation that was failing to live by them. Let's get into the pillars of his legacy. We have to remember One of his most biggest speeches, the I Have a Dream speech from 1963 during the March on Washington. This is his most famous speech, where he called on America to finally live up to his promise of equality. He framed civil rights not just as a political issue, but as a moral and constitutional imperative, offering a hopeful vision and racial harmony. But remember, he was also there to collect the debt. He told the world that America had handed black people a bad check, a promise of freedom that kept bouncing. At that time, the black unemployment rate was at about 10.8%, more than double of, the Caucasian race, which their rate was about 5%. He knew that if economic foundation is broken, the dream remains out of reach. We'll also get into his letter from Birmingham Jail in 1963. It was a written oration. Though originally a letter written on scraps of paper in a cell, this is one of King's greatest orations when read aloud. In it, he defends nonviolent direct action and challenges the idea that people should wait patiently for justice. His message was clear: wait has almost meant never. He warned us that the biggest obstacle to freedom isn't the person in the white hood, it's the moderate who prefers a fake peace over a real justice. He was responding to leaders who told him to slow down, proving that justice delayed is justice denied. Number three, we get into Beyond Vietnam, a time to break silence that happened in 1967 at the Riverside Church. This marked a major turning point where King publicly opposed the Vietnam War, linking it to racism, materialism, and poverty. It showed his commitment to global justice and moral consistency, even when it made him unpopular with the government. He named these the triple evils. He argued that a nation spending more on military defense than on a program of social uplift is approaching spiritual death. In 1967, the U.S. was spending about $30 billion a year on war, while poverty programs were being cut, a reality that still feels very close to home in 2026. We'll also get into Give Us the Ballot speech, prayer pilgrimage for freedom. This happened in 1957. This was a forceful demand for voting rights, delivered years before the Voting Rights Act was passed. King argued that political power was essential for dignity and safety. He knew that if we had the right to vote, we wouldn't have to beg for justice. We could elect it. He told the nation, give us a ballot, and we will no longer have to worry the federal government about the basic rights. Looking at the world in 2026, we're still fighting for the same access. His words are a direct call to stay at the polls and protect our powers. And most final, I have been to the Mountaintop, a speech that he performed or read in 1968 in Memphis. This was a pathetic, emotional address delivered in support of striking sanitation workers the night before his assassination. King spoke about having seen the promised land, foreshadowing his own demise, while urging courage and unity at the same time. He was there for the workers, the people who do the hard work for low pay. He called for dangerous unselfishness and told the crowd that while he might not get there with them, we as the people would reach the goal. Unfortunately, he did pass less than 24 hours later after that speech, still standing for the dignity, though, of the working man. Then we will get into and talk about the sacrifice. And I'll be showing you guys and playing some audios, some clips of some videos and some audios as well. But before we listen to these clips, we have to talk about the cost. On April 4th, 1968, Dr. King was standing on a balcony of the Lorraine Motel in Memphis at 6:01 p.m. A single shot was fired. He was 39 years old at the time. While the official story points to James Earl Ray, many, including the King family, have pointed to a larger conspiracy by those who feared his Poor People's Campaign. They silenced the man because he was uniting the people across all lines to demand a fair share. As you listen to these audios, I want you to ask yourself, have we reached that promised land or are we still climbing? Y'all can drop down and put a 1 in the chat or any type of comment in the chat if you're ready to hear the voice of the warrior. So first and foremost, y'all, let me give you a little bit of background to listen to when it comes to MLK Jr. So here, let's hear a little piece of his biography, and then we'll get into our first video with some very, very serious words from Reverend Al Sharpton. And he will be speaking on what Dr. King fought for is now a serious risk. And I do believe and agree with that myself. But let's hear a little on the biography.
Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., 1929-1968, was an American Baptist minister and the most prominent leader of the U.S. civil rights movement. Born on January 15, 1929, in Atlanta, Georgia, King grew up in a family rooted in the Black church and activism. He excelled academically, earning a bachelor's degree from Morehouse College, a divinity degree from Crozer Theological Seminary, and a doctorate in systematic theology from Boston University. King rose to national prominence in 1955 when he led the Montgomery bus boycott after Rosa Parks was arrested for refusing to give up her seat to a white passenger. The year-long boycott ended segregation on city buses and established King as a powerful advocate of nonviolent resistance. Deeply influenced by Christian ethics and the philosophy of Mahatma Gandhi, King championed nonviolence as both a moral principle and an effective strategy for social change. He helped found the Southern Christian Leadership Conference, SCLC, organizing campaigns across the South to challenge segregation, voter suppression, and economic injustice. Among his most significant contributions were leadership in the Birmingham Campaign, 1963, which exposed the brutality of segregation. His iconic "I Have a Dream" speech during the March on Washington, 1963. Advocacy that helped secure passage of the Civil Rights Act of 1964 and the Voting Rights Act of 1965. In 1964, King became the youngest person ever awarded the Nobel Peace Prize for his work to end racial discrimination through nonviolent means. In his later years, King broadened his focus to include poverty, economic inequality, and opposition to the Vietnam War, arguing that racism, militarism, and materialism were interconnected injustices. Dr. King was assassinated on April 4, 1968, in Memphis, Tennessee, while supporting a sanitation workers' strike. His legacy endures as a global symbol of courage, moral clarity, and the power of peaceful resistance to transform society.
Reverend Sharpton, we do want to make sure to spend a moment on today's other meeting, an important meeting. It is, of course, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Day. You're in Washington. Tell us how you plan to commemorate this day, but also just what it means. And I feel like it takes on an added resonance in some ways. That, you know, this might be a harder day because of everything that is happening right now and just the scenes that we're seeing across our country.
Well, it does take on a different type of focus today. Annually, our National Action Network, which I head, has a breakfast in Washington, the nation's capital, co-chaired by Martin Luther King III and Andrea Waters King, who head the Drum Major Institute, and both of them are here with me. And we honor people that have kept the dream alive. Eric Holder, former Attorney General, is one of our honorees this morning. Then I fly to New York and do the New York National Action Network Public Forum. The governor, the mayor, and others asked to come, and they'll be there this afternoon to talk about what they're doing to keep the dream alive. I've never seen, though, in the years that we've had this holiday, and I remember when Mrs. King and Stevie Wonder and others really rallied to get this holiday, and Ronald Reagan as president signed it. In all of those years, and I was a youth director in the King movement, starting with the year he was killed, I've never seen the civil rights and human rights things that Dr. King fought for at such risk. Not only are we seeing what we're seeing in Minneapolis, active on the ground, we are seeing the Supreme Court weighing on whether to take out Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act, which was a bedrock legislation coming out of the King movement. We're seeing DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion taken away, which was part of and the offspring from the Civil Rights Act of '64. So as we celebrate Dr. King, they are dismantling what Dr. King stood for. And many of us are saying that this King Day and what message it brings is more important than it's ever been since it's been a federal holiday. In fact, we're wondering if they're going to try to make this the last federal holiday. They've already stopped under this president, Donald Trump, where you can't go to the national parks you used to free. If you want to bring your family, you bring it free on King Day, MLK Day, and Juneteenth. He stopped that, but he kept Flag Day, which happens to be his birthday. You can go celebrate Trump Day for free. Martin Luther King Day, you'll have to pay today.
Just happens to be his birthday. And we should also note, Reverend Sharpton wrote a beautiful essay about Dr. King that you can read in today's edition of The Tea, the Morning Joe newsletter. Subscribe so you can get it in your inbox this afternoon. John Meacham, turning to you now, just your thoughts on the legacy of Dr. King, particularly in the year 2026.
Dr. King offered what became tragically his final Sunday sermon, which was 4 days before he was killed in Memphis at the Washington National Cathedral. He said, "I can never be what I ought to be until you are what you ought to be. You can never be what you ought to be until I am what I ought to be. That's the way God's universe is made. That's the way it is structured." I hesitate to talk about covenant theology with Reverend Al here because he'll correct me, but America is a covenant. We recognize the inherent dignity of each other, not least because it's the right thing to do, but because the recognition of another person's inherent dignity increases the chances that they will recognize ours. It is a pragmatic covenant. And when the rule of the strong and the rule of brute force becomes the predominant factor, as opposed to the covenant recognition of each other, then the fundamental promise of the country is at risk. Don't mean to be, again, hyperbolic, don't mean to pull a fire alarm, but sometimes there's a fire and sometimes you need to pull the fire alarm. And I would just urge everyone, not just today, but every day, to think about what is it that makes the country special? What is it that makes the country a place where your own rights are secure? And I promise you, history tells us that your own rights are most secure when the other fellow's rights are also secure.
So well said. There is a fire. Presidential historian John Meacham, thank you so much for joining us this morning.
Lift every voice and sing till earth and heaven ring. Ring with the harmonies of liberty. Let it ring out loud. Let our rejoicing rise high as the listening skies. Let it resound loud as the rolling sea, like the mighty waters. Sing a song full of the faith that the dark past has taught us. We remember it all. Sing a song full of the hope that the present has brought us. Hope is alive.
The Civil Rights Act of 1964 and the Voting Rights Act of 1965 are the two cornerstone laws of the modern civil rights movement. Together, they dismantled the legal framework of segregation and voter suppression in the United States. Civil Rights Act of 1964, signed into law on July 2, 1964, by President Lyndon B. Johnson. This act outlawed discrimination based on race, color, religion, sex, or national origin. What it did ended segregation in public places, restaurants, hotels, theaters, parks, banned discrimination in employment, prohibited unequal application of voter registration requirements, strengthened the federal government's power to enforce desegregation of schools, created the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission, EEOC. Why it mattered. For nearly a century after the Civil War, Jim Crow laws enforced racial separation and inequality. The Civil Rights Act made such practices illegal nationwide and gave the federal government the authority to intervene when states or businesses violated civil rights. It was the most sweeping civil rights legislation since Reconstruction. Voting Rights Act of 1965, signed on August 6, 1965, in response to violent resistance against black voters, especially in the South. This law targeted the specific tactics used to block African Americans from voting. What it did: banned literacy tests and similar barriers, authorized federal oversight of elections in states with histories of discrimination, required certain states and counties to get federal approval, pre-clearance, before changing voting laws, sent federal examiners to register voters where local officials refused. Why it mattered. Before 1965, many southern states used legal tricks to prevent black citizens from voting. Within a few years of the Act's passage, millions of new black voters were registered, transforming Southern politics and representation. Together, their impact turned the promises of the Constitution into enforceable reality, shifted civil rights from moral appeal to binding federal law, marked the transition from protest to structural change, fulfilled much of what Dr. King and others demanded in the streets. These laws did not end racism, but they ended the legal permission for discrimination and voter exclusion, reshaping American democracy.
All right, y'all. So we're going to go ahead and get into the next portion of the live. That audio there that I played for you guys was about Give Us the Ballot from 1957, as you can hear, with the Voting Rights Act. We are seeing now that a lot of states and cities, voting privileges are being taken away from certain minorities and individuals. So it's almost as if we kind of are going back in history. Even within 2026, the ballot boxes are being tampered with and the elections are being manipulated. And so all of this comes full circle as we talk about MLK Jr. and everything he stood for and fought for, and actually was successful to put into place for people to have equal rights. And some of those rights in 2026 now are trying to be reversed and taken back from us. So I think it's very important for us to know some of these histories and pay attention to how history sometimes continues to repeat itself. Anyway, we'll be moving on to 1967, beyond Vietnam. Remember, I said this is the speech that made the establishment turn against him. King stepped out of the civil rights box and spoke on global justices. He linked the wars abroad to the poverty at home, naming them the triple evils: racism, militarism, and materialism. He showed us that you can't claim to be a man of God while supporting the destruction of poor people across the world. It's his most consistent and courageous moral standard. And I have some of the raw speech that I want to play for you guys. So we're going to go ahead and play just a little bit of that. And y'all know Martin Luther King Jr., his speeches are very long and he does kind of talk a little slow. So I did speed the video up just a little bit, guys. And we will just get through portions of it. I cannot play all of it because we have other speeches to get into and other videos and audios to play. But let's go ahead and hear some of this. And you guys let me know if these words that were spoken way back way back in 1967 are not still relevant today in 2026. Let's go ahead and get into some of the Martin Luther King Jr. speech. This is the speech, like I said, beyond Vietnam. Let's get into it.
Mr. Chairman, ladies and gentlemen, I need not pause to say how very delighted I am to be here tonight, and how very delighted I am to see you expressing your concern about the issues that will be discussed tonight by turning out in such large numbers. I also want to say that I consider it a great honor to share this program with Dr. Bennett, Dr. Comminger, and Rabbi Heschel, some of the distinguished leaders and personalities of our nation. And of course, it's always good to come back to Riverside Church. Over the last 8 years, I have had the privilege of preaching here almost every year in that period. It is always a rich and rewarding experience to come to this great church and this great pulpit. I come to this magnificent house of worship tonight because my conscience leaves me no other choice. I join you in this meeting because I'm in deepest agreement with the aims and work of the organization which has brought us together, clergy and laymen concerned about Vietnam. The recent statements of your executive committee are the sentiments of my own heart, and I found myself in full accord when I read its opening lines. A time comes when silence is betrayal. And that time has come for us in relation to Vietnam. The truth of these words is beyond doubt, but the mission to which they call us is a most difficult one. Even when pressed by the demands of inner truth, men do not easily assume the task of opposing their government's policy, especially in time of war. Nor does the human spirit move without great difficulty against all the apathy of conformist thought within one's own bosom and in the surrounding world. Moreover, when the issues at hand seem as perplexing as they often do, in the case of this dreadful conflict, we are always on the verge of being mesmerized by uncertainty. But we must move on. Some of us who have already begun to break the silence of the night have found that the calling to speak is often a vocation of agony. But we must speak. We must speak with all the humility that is appropriate to our limited vision. But we must speak. And we must rejoice as well, for surely this is the first time in our nation's history that a significant number of its religious leaders have chosen to move beyond the prophesying of smooth patriotism to the high grounds of a firm dissent based upon the mandates of conscience and the reading of history. Perhaps a new spirit is rising among us. If it is, let us trace its movements and pray that our own inner being may be sensitive to its guidance, for we are deeply in need of a new way beyond the darkness that seems so close around us. Over the past 2 years, as I have moved to break the betrayal of my own silences and to speak from the burnings of my own heart, as I have called for radical departures from the destruction of Vietnam, many persons have questioned me about the wisdom of my path. At the heart of their concerns, this query has often loomed large and loud. Why are you speaking about the war, Dr. King? Why are you joining the voices of dissent? Peace and civil rights don't mix, they say. Aren't you hurting the cause of your people, they ask. And when I hear them, though I often understand the source of their concern, I'm nevertheless greatly saddened, for such questions mean that the inquirers have not really known me, my commitment or my calling. Indeed, their questions suggest that they do not know the world in which they live. In the light of such tragic misunderstanding, I deem it of signal importance to try to state clearly, and I trust concisely, why I believe that the path from Dexter Avenue Baptist Church, the church in Montgomery, Alabama, where I began my pastorate, leads clearly to this sanctuary tonight. I come to this platform tonight to make a passionate plea to my beloved nation. This speech is not addressed to Hanoi or to the National Liberation Front. It is not addressed to China or to Russia. nor is it an attempt to overlook the ambiguity of the total situation and the need for a collective solution to the tragedy of Vietnam. Neither is it an attempt to make North Vietnam or the National Liberation Front paragons of virtue, nor to overlook the role they must play in the successful resolution of the problem. While they both may have justifiable reasons to be suspicious of the good faith of the United States, life and history give eloquent testimony to the fact that conflicts are never resolved without trustful give and take on both sides. Tonight, however, I wish not to speak with Hanoi and the National Liberation Front, but rather to my fellow Americans. That is, at the outset of their obvious and almost facile connection between the war in Vietnam and the struggle I and others have been waging in America. A few years ago, there was a shining moment in that struggle. It seemed as if there was a real promise of hope for the poor, both black and white, through the poverty program. There were experiments, hopes, new beginnings. Then came the build-up in Vietnam, and I watched this program broken and eviscerated as if it was some idle political plaything of a society gone mad on war. And I knew that America would never invest the necessary funds or energies in rehabilitation of its poor so long as adventures like Vietnam continued to draw men and skills and money like some demonic destructive suction tube. So I was increasingly compelled to see the war as an enemy of the poor and to attack it as such. Perhaps a more tragic recognition of reality took place when it became clear to me that the war was doing far more than devastating the hopes of the poor at home. It was sending their sons and their brothers and their husbands to fight and to die in extraordinarily high proportions relative to the rest of the population. We were taking the black young men who had been crippled by our society and sending them 8,000 miles away to guarantee liberties in Southeast Asia, which they had not found in Southwest Georgia and East Harlem. And so we have been repeatedly faced with the cruel irony of watching Negro and white boys on TV screens as they kill and die together for a nation that has been unable to seat them together in the same schools. So we watched them in brutal solidarity, burning the huts of a poor village, but we realized that they would hardly live on the same block in Chicago. I could not be silent in the face of such cruel manipulation of the poor. My third reason moves to an even deeper level of awareness, for it grows out of my experience in the ghettos of the North over the last 3 years, especially the last 3 summers. As I have walked among the desperate, rejected, and angry young men, I have told them that Molotov cocktails and rifles would not solve their problems. I have tried to offer them my deepest compassion while maintaining my conviction that social change comes most meaningfully through nonviolent action. But they ask, and rightly so, what about Vietnam? They ask if our own nation wasn't using massive doses of violence to solve its problems, to bring about the changes it wanted. Their questions hit home, and I knew that I could never again raise my voice against the violence of the oppressed in the ghettos without having first spoken clearly to the greatest purveyor of violence in the world today, my own government. For the sake of those boys, for the sake of this government, for the sake of the hundreds of thousands trembling under our violence, I cannot be silent. For those who ask the question, aren't you a civil rights leader? And thereby mean to exclude me from the movement for peace, I have this further answer. In 1957, when a group of us formed the Southern Christian Leadership Conference, we chose as our motto to save the soul of America. We were convinced that we could not limit our vision to certain rights for black people, but instead affirmed the conviction that America would never be free or saved from itself until the descendants of its slaves were loosed completely from the shackles they still wear. In a way, we were agreeing with Langston Hughes, that black bard of Harlem, who had written earlier, "Oh yes, I say it plain. America never was America to me, and yet I swear this oath, America will be." Now it should be incandescently clear that no one who has any concern for the integrity and life of America today can ignore the present war. If America's soul becomes totally poisoned, part of the autopsy must read Vietnam. It can never be saved so long as it destroys the deepest hopes of men the world over. So it is that those of us who are yet determined that America will be are led down the path of protest and dissent, working for the health of our land. As if the weight of such a commitment to the life and health of America were not enough, another burden of responsibility was placed upon me in 1954. And I cannot forget that the Nobel Peace Prize was also a commission to work harder than I had ever worked before for the brotherhood of man. This is a calling that takes me beyond national allegiances. But even if it were not present, I would yet have to live with the meaning of my commitment to the ministry of Jesus Christ. To me, the relationship of this ministry to the making of peace is so obvious that I sometimes marvel at those who ask me why I am speaking against the war. Could it be that they do not know that the good news was meant for all men, for communists and capitalists, for their children and ours, for black and for white, for revolutionary and conservative? Have they forgotten that my ministry is in obedience to the one who loved his enemies so fully that he died for them? What then can I say to the Viet Cong, or to Castro, or to Mao as a faithful minister of this one? Can I threaten them with death, or must I not share with them my life? And finally, as I try to explain for you and for myself the road that leads from Montgomery to this place, I would have offered all that was most valid if I simply said that I must be true to my conviction, that I share with all men the calling to be a son of the living God. Beyond the calling of race or nation or creed is this vocation of sonship and brotherhood, because I believe that the Father is deeply concerned, especially for his suffering and helpless and outcast children. I come tonight to speak for them. This I believe to be the privilege and the burden of all of us who deem ourselves bound by allegiances and loyalties, which are broader and deeper than nationalism, and which go beyond our nation's self-defined goals and positions. We are called to speak for the weak, for the voiceless, for the victims of our nation, and for those it calls enemy. For no document from human hands can make these humans any less our brothers. And as I ponder the madness of Vietnam, and search within myself for ways to understand and respond in compassion, my mind goes constantly to the people of that peninsula. I speak now not of the soldiers of each side, not of the ideologies of the Liberation Front, not of the Hunter side gone, but simply of the people who have been living under the curse of war for almost 3 continuous decades now. I think of them too, because it is clear to me that there will be no meaningful solution there until some attempt is made to know them and hear their broken cries. They must see Americans as strange liberators. The Vietnamese people proclaimed their own independence in 1945 after a combined French and Japanese occupation and before the Communist Revolution in China. They were led by Ho Chi Minh. Even though they quoted the American Declaration of Independence in their own document of freedom, we refused to recognize them. Instead, we decided to support France in its reconquest of a former colony. Our government felt then that the Vietnamese people were not ready for independence. We again fell victim to the deadly Western arrogance that has poisoned the international atmosphere for so long. With that tragic decision, we rejected a revolutionary government seeking self-determination, and a government that had been established not by China, for whom the Vietnamese have no great love, but by clearly indigenous forces that included some communists. For the peasants, this new government meant real land reform, one of the most important needs in their lives. For 9 years following 1945, we denied the people of Vietnam the right of independence. For 9 years, we vigorously supported the French in their abortive effort to recolonize Vietnam. Before the end of the war, we were meeting 80% of the French war cost. Even before the French were defeated at Dien Bien Phu, they began to despair of their reckless action, but we did not. We encouraged them with our huge financial and military supplies to continue the war even after they had lost the will. Soon.
All right, y'all. So I will play just a little bit more of, that speech in just a moment. I just want to take a quick break to, just break down basically what is really being talked about and the relevance of the conversation within this speech and how it's actually very relevant today in 2026. So when Dr. King delivered his Beyond Vietnam speech in 1967, he wasn't just talking about a war across the ocean. He was talking about a malady within the American spirit. To understand his stance, you have to see the 3 main reasons he called the war enemy of the poor. Number 1, the broken promise at home. King had been a huge supporter of President Lyndon B. Johnson's Great Society and the War on Poverty. These were massive government programs designed to finally invest in Black and poor communities. But there were conflicts. As the Vietnam War escalated, the government began spending nearly $35 billion a year on the military while slashing the budget for poverty programs at home. His take was, He watched the poverty program escalate, and as if were some were idle, political plaything of society gone mad on war. He realized that as long as America was obsessed with war, it would never have the money or the heart to fix the decaying cities at home. The irony of the front lines. King pointed out a cruel and tragic recognition of reality. The military was drafting poor black men into disproportionate numbers to go 8,000 miles away to fight for liberties in Southeast Asia that they didn't even have in Southwest Georgia or East Harlem. The brutal solidarity. He noted that black and white soldiers were being unalived or losing their lives together in a brutal solidarity on the battlefield. Yet, back in the States, they couldn't even sit together in the same classrooms or live in the same neighborhoods. The moral consistency of nonviolence. This was perhaps his most personal struggle. As he traveled through the American ghettos, young men would ask him, if our nation uses massive doses of violence to solve its problems, why should we stay nonviolent? This was Dr. King's answer. He realized he could never again speak out against the violence of the oppressed in the streets of the United States without first speaking clearly against the greatest purveyor of violence in the world today, the government. He believed you couldn't pick and choose when to be against violence. Why was this dangerous for him? When he gave this speech, he lost almost all of his allies. The media, New York Times, Washington Post, they both attacked him, saying he had diminished his usefulness by mixing civil rights with foreign policy. The civil rights movement, groups like the NAACP, criticized him, fearing that offending President Johnson would stop the progress of civil rights laws. And then there's the publics. Polls showed that 72% of white Americans and even 55% of black Americans disapproved of him speaking out against the war. When King spoke on Vietnam, he was telling us that war and poverty are two sides of the same coin. He was warning us that if we keep spending our billions on guided missiles instead of misguided men, we are approaching a spiritual death. In 2026, we look at our own military budgets compared to the housing and healthcare crisis in cities like Fayetteville, which I live in. We are hearing King's ghost still asking, when will the poor stop paying for the war with their lives? And so I just wanted to go ahead and break that down just a little bit so we can give some type of clarity if you don't fully understand, and we cannot play the full speech because it is kind of long. We have to move on to the next one about exactly what he was talking about and the importance of that speech. And Darren, it is 2026 and it is MLK Jr. Day today. And we see everything that's happening within our political sector, in our government. And it really pushes us to question, have things changed or are they going back? Everything that these noble activists fought for and tried to bring to the attention of the people so we could have a brighter tomorrow seems to be going in reverse. And so I think it's very important for us to celebrate and talk about the importance of what MLK Jr. was bringing to the people, talking about to the government, moving across the country and spreading the knowledge and the wisdom. We need that again. We need more activists and leaders to do that again, in my personal opinion. And this is just me speaking from my personal opinion. We seem to be a nation in a world that is lost because where is the leadership right now? We don't seem to have much. Let's play a little bit more of this speech here, Beyond Vietnam, and then we'll get into the second speech.
We would be paying almost the full cost of this tragic attempt at recolonization. After the French were defeated It looked as if independence and land reform would come again through the Geneva Agreement. But instead, there came the United States, determined that whole should not unify the temporarily divided nation. And the peasants watched again as we supported one of the most vicious modern dictators, our chosen man, Premier Diem. The peasants watched and cringed as Diem ruthlessly rooted out all opposition, supported bad extortionist landlords, and refused even to discuss reunification with the North. The peasants watched as all this was presided over by United States influence, and then by increasing numbers of United States troops who came to help quell the insurgency that Diem's methods had aroused. When Diem was overthrown, they may have been happy, but the long line of military dictators seemed to offer no real change, especially in terms of their need for land and peace. The only change came from America, as we increased our troop commitments in support of governments which were singularly corrupt, inept, and without popular support. All the while, the people read our leaflets and received irregular promises of peace and democracy and land reform. Now they languish under our bombs and consider us not their fellow Vietnamese, the real enemy. They move sadly and apathetically as we herd them off the land of their fathers into concentration camps where minimal social needs are rarely met. They know they must move on or be destroyed by our bombs. So they go, primarily women and children and the aged. They watch as we poison their water, as we kill 1 million acres of their crops. They must weep as the bulldozers roll through their areas preparing to destroy the precious trees. They wandered into the hospitals with at least 20 casualties from American firepower for one Viet Cong inflicted injury. So far, we may have killed 1 million of them, mostly children. They wander into the towns and see thousands of the children, homeless, without soliciting for their mothers. What do the peasants think as we ally ourselves with the landlords and as we refuse to put any action into our many words concerning land reform? What do they think as we test out our latest weapons on them, just as the Germans tested out new medicine and new tortures in the concentration camps of Europe? Where are the roots of the independent Vietnam we claim to be building? Is it among these voiceless ones? We have destroyed their two most cherished institutions, the family and the village. We have destroyed their land and their crops. We have cooperated in the crushing of the nation's only non-communist revolutionary political force, the unified Buddhist church. We have supported the enemies of the peasants of Saigon. We have corrupted their women and children and killed their men. Now that is little left to build on save bitterness. What of the National Liberation Front? That strangely anonymous group we call VC or communists. What must they think of the United States of America when they realize that we permitted the repression and cruelty of Diem, which helped to bring them into being as a resistance group in the South? What do they think of our condoning the violence which led to their own taking up of arms? How can they believe in our integrity when now we speak of aggression from the North as if there were nothing more essential to the war? How can they trust us when now we charge them with violence after the murderous reign of Diem, and charge them with violence while we pour every new weapon of death into their land? Surely we must understand their feelings, even if we do not condone their actions. Surely we must see that the men we supported pressed them to their violence. Surely we must see that our own computerized plans of destruction simply dwarf their greatest acts. How do they judge us when our officials know that their membership is less than 25% communist and yet insist on giving them the blanket name? What must they be thinking when they know that we are aware of their control of major sections of Vietnam, and yet we appear ready to allow national elections in which this highly organized political parallel government will not have a part? They ask how we can speak of free elections when the Saigon press is censored and controlled by the military junta. And they're surely right to wonder what kind of new government we plan to help form without them. The only part.
All right, guys. So I'm so sorry to end that early, but we do have a few more speeches that we need to get through, and some of them are long. You know, most of the most popular speeches are pretty long. So we're going to just go ahead and take a quick song break. After we come back from this song break, y'all, we're going to go ahead and get into the next speech from MLK Jr., and that will be the most famous I Have a Dream speech. In just a moment, let me go ahead and play this song, and we'll be right back.
But so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming. Hold your head high, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the fire, through the perilous height, we're still standing. For the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rocket's red glare, the bombs bursting in air. We won't back down. They proved through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, it's still there. Oh, say, does that star-spangled banner yet wave? Oh, wait for justice. For the land of the free, and the home of the brave.
The Montgomery bus boycott, 1955-1956, was a pivotal protest against racial segregation on public buses in Montgomery, Alabama. It began on December 5, 1955, after Rosa Parks was arrested for refusing to give up her seat to a white passenger. At the time, black riders, who made up the majority of bus passengers, were forced to sit at the back, give up seats, and endure daily humiliation. In response, Montgomery's black community organized a mass boycott of the city's buses. People walked miles to work, formed carpool systems, and relied on black-owned taxis, sustaining the protest for 381 days. A young pastor, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., was chosen to lead the effort through the newly formed Montgomery Improvement Association, MIA. King emphasized nonviolent resistance, discipline, and unity, even as participants faced arrests, threats, and bombings. The boycott ended in victory on December 20, 1956, after the U.S. Supreme Court ruled that segregation on public buses was unconstitutional. Montgomery's buses were officially desegregated the next day. Why it mattered proved the power of collective nonviolent action, launched Martin Luther King Jr. as a national leader, became a model for future civil rights campaigns, demonstrated that ordinary people could dismantle unjust laws. The Montgomery bus boycott showed that sustained, peaceful protest could transform society, and it ignited the modern civil rights movement. The March on Washington for Jobs and Freedom took place on August 28, 1963, and became one of the most significant events in American history. More than 250,000 people, black and white, young and old, gathered at the Lincoln Memorial in Washington, D.C. to demand an end to racial segregation, fair employment and living wages, strong federal civil rights legislation, voting rights for black Americans. It was organized by a coalition of civil rights, labor, and religious leaders, including A. Philip Randolph, Bayard Rustin, Martin Luther King Jr., John Lewis, and others. The march is most remembered for Dr. King's iconic "I Have a Dream" speech, in which he envisioned a nation where people would be judged not by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. Speaking from the steps of the Lincoln Memorial, King connected the struggle for civil rights to America's founding ideals and moral conscience. The event was peaceful, disciplined, and powerful, countering narratives that civil rights activism was dangerous or chaotic. It helped shift public opinion and placed enormous pressure on Congress and the White House. Impact: accelerated passage of the Civil Rights Act of 1964, built momentum for the Voting Rights Act of 1965, demonstrated the strength and unity of the civil rights movement, cemented Martin Luther King Jr. as a global moral leader. The March on Washington remains a symbol of collective action, moral clarity, and the power of peaceful protest to reshape a nation.
All right, y'all. So we're going to go ahead and get into the next speech and listen to a little bit of that. It is one of the most iconic and famous speeches, the I Have a Dream speech from 1963. But I want us to look at the fire behind the words. On August 28, 1963, over 250,000 people marched on Washington. They weren't just there for a pep talk. They were there to demand what was owed to them. Dr. King stood on those steps and told the world that American Constitution was a promissory note, a legal document promising every citizen the rights of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. But he was bold enough to say that for Black Americans as well. The check had been backmarked, insufficient funds. He wasn't just dreaming. He was calling out a bankruptcy of justice. He was challenging America to finally grow up and live out its own creed. It was a call for a moral and constitutional revolution, warning the nation that with the windwhirls of revolt would continue until the bright day of justice emerged. So as we sit here in 2026, have we asked ourselves, is that check still bouncing? And then for the final speech that we will listen to, y'all know this one is a popular one as well. I Have Been to the Mountaintop from 1968. This was Dr. King's final message to the world, delivered in Memphis, Tennessee on April 3rd, 1968. He was there to support 1,300 Black sanitation workers who were striking for basic dignity and fair wages. You have to understand the atmosphere. There were bomb threats, he was exhausted, and the storm was howling outside the church. In this speech, King moved past the dream and got into the strategy of sacrifice. He called for the dangerous unselfishness. He told the people to take their money out of the banks that didn't respect them and put it into Black-owned businesses. He was hitting the system where it hurts the most, the pockets. But the most haunting part is the ending. It's like he knew his time was up. He told the crowd, I may not get there with you, but I want you to know tonight that we as people will get to that promised land. He wasn't fearing any man. He was at peace because he had seen the vision of the finished work. He was unalive less than 24 hours later. He left us with the blueprint, unity, economic power, and the courage to finish the march. Think about that transition, family. In 63, he was asking for a check to be honored. By 68, he was telling us how to build our own power. He went from the dreaming to the planning. If you guys is with me and you feel the message, please let me know in the comment section. We're going to go ahead and get into this most pivotal and this most prominent speech from Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. I Have a Dream, August 28th, 1963. Let's get into it.
At this time, I have the honor to present to you the moral leader of our nation. I have the pleasure to present to you Dr. Martin Luther King, Jr.
I am happy to join with you today in what will go down in history as the greatest demonstration for freedom in the history of our nation. Five score years ago, a great American in whose symbolic shadow we stand today signed the Emancipation Proclamation. This momentous decree came as a great beacon light of hope to millions of Negro slaves who had been seared in the flames of withering injustice. It came as a joyous daybreak to end the long night of their captivity. But 100 years later, the Negro still is not free. 100 years later, the life of the Negro is still sadly crippled by the manacles of segregation and the chains of discrimination. 100 years later, the Negro lives on a lonely island of poverty in the midst of a vast ocean of material prosperity. 100 years later, the Negro is still languished in the corners of American society and finds himself in exile in his own land. And so we've come here today to dramatize a shameful condition. In a sense, we've come to our nation's capital to cash a check. When the architects of our republic wrote the magnificent words of the Constitution and the Declaration of Independence, they were signing a promissory note to which every American was to fall heir. This note was a promise that all men, yes, black men as well as white men, would be guaranteed the unalienable rights of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. It is obvious today that America has defaulted on this promissory note insofar as her citizens of color are concerned. Instead of honoring this sacred obligation, America has given the Negro people a bad check, a check which has come back marked insufficient funds. But we refuse to believe that the Bank of Justice is bankrupt. We refuse to believe that there are insufficient funds in the great vaults of opportunity of this nation. So we've come to cash this check, a check that will give us upon demand the riches of freedom and the security of justice. We have also come to this hallowed spot to remind America of the fierce urgency of now. This is no time to engage in the luxury of cooling off or to take the tranquilizing drug of gradualism. Now is the time to make real the promises of democracy. Now is the time to rise from the dark and desolate valley of segregation to the sunlit path of racial justice. Now is the time to lift our nation from the quicksands of racial injustice to the solid rock of brotherhood. Now is the time to make justice a reality for all of God's children. It would be fatal for the nation to overlook the urgency of the moment, This sweltering summer of the Negro's legitimate discontent will not pass until that is an invigorating autumn of freedom and equality. 1963 is not an end, but a beginning. Those who hope that the Negro needed to blow off steam and will now be content will have a rude awakening if the nation returns to business as usual. There will be neither rest nor tranquility in America until the Negro is granted his citizenship rights. The whirlwinds of revolt will continue to shake the foundations of our nation until the bright day of justice emerges. But that is something that I must say to my people who stand on the warm threshold which leads into the palace of justice. In the process of gaining our rightful place, we must not be guilty of wrongful deeds. Let us not seek to satisfy our thirst for freedom by drinking from the cup of bitterness and hatred. We must forever conduct our struggle on the high plane of dignity and discipline. We must not allow our creative protests to degenerate into physical violence. Again and again, we must rise to the majestic heights of meeting physical force with soul force. The marvelous new militancy which has engulfed the Negro community must not lead us to a distrust of all white people. For many of our white brothers, as evidenced by their presence here today, have come to realize that their destiny is tied up with our destiny. They have come to realize that their freedom is inextricably bound to our freedom. We cannot walk alone. And as we walk, we must make the pledge that we shall always march ahead. We cannot turn back. There are those who are asking the devotees of civil rights, when will you be satisfied? We can never be satisfied as long as the Negro is the victim of the unspeakable horrors of police brutality. We can never be satisfied as long as our body is heavy with the fatigue of travel, cannot gain lodging in the motels of the highways and the hotels of the cities. We cannot be satisfied as long as the Negro's basic mobility is from a smaller ghetto to a larger one. We can never be satisfied as long as our children are stripped of their selfhood and robbed of their dignity by signs stating for whites only. We cannot be satisfied as long as a Negro in Mississippi cannot vote and a Negro in New York believes he has nothing for which to vote. No, we are not satisfied, and we will not be satisfied until justice rolls down like waters and righteousness like a mighty stream. I am not unmindful that some of you have come here out of great trials and tribulations. Some of you have come fresh from narrow jail cells. Some of you have come from areas where your quest for freedom left you battered by the storms of persecution and staggered by the winds of police brutality. You have been the veterans of creative suffering. Continue to work with the faith that unearned suffering is redemptive. Go back to Mississippi. Go back to Alabama. Go back to South Carolina. Go back to Georgia. Go back to Louisiana. Go back to the slums and ghettos of our northern cities. Knowing that somehow this situation can and will be changed. Let us not wallow in the valley of despair. I say to you today, my friend, so even though we face the difficulties of today and tomorrow, I still have a dream. It is a dream deeply rooted in the American dream. I have a dream that one day this nation will rise up and live out the true meaning of its creed. We hold these truths to be self-evident that all men are created equal. I have a dream that one day on the red hills of Georgia, the sons of former slaves and the sons of former slave owners will they be able to sit down together at the table of brotherhood. I have a dream that one day, even the state of Mississippi, a state sweltering with the heat of injustice, sweltering with the heat of oppression, will be transformed into an oasis of freedom and justice. I have a dream that my 4 little children will one day live in a nation where they will not be judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. I have a dream today I have a dream that one day, down in Alabama, with its vicious racists, with its governor having his lips dripping with the words of interposition and nullification, one day right there in Alabama, little black boys and black girls will be able to join hands with little white boys and white girls as sisters and brothers. I have a dream today. I have a dream that one day every valley shall be exalted. Every hill and mountain shall be made low, the rough places will be made plain, and the crooked places will be made straight, and the glory of the Lord shall be revealed, and all flesh shall see it together. This is our hope. This is the faith that I go back to the South with. With this faith, we will be able to hew out of the mountain of despair a stone of hope. With this faith, we will be able to transform the jangling discords of our nation into a beautiful symphony of brotherhood. With this faith, we will be able to work together, to pray together, to struggle together, to go to jail together, to stand up for freedom together, knowing that we will be free one day. This will be the day. This will be the day when all of God's children will be able to sing with new meaning, "My country tears of thee." Sweet land of liberty, of thee I sing. Land where my fathers died, land of the pilgrims' pride. From every mountainside, let freedom ring. And if America is to be a great nation, this must become true. And so let freedom ring. From the prodigious hilltops of New Hampshire, let freedom ring. From the mighty mountains of New York, let freedom ring. From the heightening Alleghanies of Pennsylvania, let freedom ring. From the snow-capped Rockies of Colorado, let freedom ring. From the curvaceous slopes of California. But not only that, let freedom ring from Stone Mountain of Georgia. Let freedom ring from Lookout Mountain of Tennessee. Let freedom ring from every hill and molehill of Mississippi, from every mountainside. Let freedom ring. And when this happens, and when we allow freedom ring, when we let it ring from every village and every hamlet, from every state and every city, we will be able to speed up that day when all of God's children, black men and white men, Jews and Gentiles, Protestants and Catholics, will be able to join hands and sing in the words of the old Negro spiritual, "Free at last, free at last, thank God Almighty, we are free at last."
All right, y'all. So what an excellent and powerful speech. I wanted to play that from the exact mouth and words of MLK Jr. to give him the proper, I would say, praise and recognition today on his day that they have vowed to give to him. But I'm telling you, for real, from my heart and my mind, his words and his movement rang so true. And we are in year of 2026, and we are still seeing that a lot of those fights and a lot of those words that he spoke are relevant to today. But we do need to give ourselves small wins when we have them. We saw the walls of legal segregation crumble. We saw Black excellence rise to the highest offices in the land, from the boardroom to the Oval Office. Those were dreams coming true in real time, dreams that MLK Jr. dreamt, not just for himself, but for his people and for us as a people. We prove that when we move as one, the bad check can be cashed. However, Dr. King also warned us that freedom is never voluntary, given by the oppressor. As we stand here in 2026, we see that progress is not a one-way street. We see the attempts to roll back voting access, the attacks on our history in schools, and the economic gaps that still haunt our neighborhoods. The dream did come true in so many ways, but the dream is like a flame. If you don't keep feeding it, it will go out. We have to continue to fight to keep the ground we've already won. We aren't just dreaming anymore. We are defending the progress our ancestors paid for in blood. So as we sit here today, we have to ask ourselves, are we going to let the flame flicker out, or are we going to carry the torch? Look at your own life. Think about the doors that are open today that were closed to your grandparents. That's the dream in action. But look at the news today. Those same doors are trying to be kicked back shut. So what do? We stand, we speak, and we fight. We're going to take a quick song break, and then we will get into the final speech from Martin Luther King. I've been to the Mountaintop from April 3rd, 1968, one of his most famous speeches. I'm going to play this remake and rendition of the song We Shall Overcome. Y'all let me know if y'all like it or not. I have a remake and I have a remix. I'll be playing both, and then we will get into his final speech. And after that, words from Bernice King, MLK Jr.'s daughter, on today. So let's get into this song, and we'll be right back.
We shall overcome. Through the fire and the rain, we still run. We shall overcome. They can't eclipse the light of the sun. Deep in my heart, I still believe we shall overcome someday. Right. Deep in my heart, I do believe that we shall overcome someday. Just a ticking clock and a dark slip pad. But someday feels like it's slipping away. 2020's fixed and we're back in the fray. Yo, look, it's 2026 and the cycle is vicious. They're erasing the progress, making us suspicious. Rolling back the DII, cutting the light, targeting the cities in the middle of the night. I see the ice ages moving through the Twin Cities. Another life lost, no mercy, no pity. They say merit-based, but we know the code. It's a heavy weight, it's a long dark road. They're taking King's name, but they're killing the dream. Dismantling the systems, or so it would seem. From the border to the block, the tension is rising, but the spirit of the people, man, is still enterprising. We reclaim the day, we reclaim the street. You can hear the revolution in the pulse of the beat. They want us divided, they want us in fear, but the voice of the warrior is perfectly clear. No queen and a G for the ones who oppress. We're standing for the truth, nothing more, nothing less. Whether it's the legal gaps or the climate in crisis, our resilience is the gold, and that's what the price is. We shall overcome. We won't back down. We shall overcome. We hold the ground. Oh, deep in my heart, I do believe we shall overcome someday. We're still here, 2026, still fighting. Someday is now.
Thank you very kindly, my friends. As I listened to Ralph Abernathy and his eloquent and generous introduction, and then thought about myself, I wondered who he was talking about. It's always good to have your closest friend and associate to say something good about you. And Ralph Abernathy is the best friend that I have in the world. I'm delighted to see each of you here tonight in spite of a storm warning. You reveal that you are determined to go on anyhow. Something is happening in Memphis, something is happening in our world. And you know, if I were standing at the beginning of time with the possibility of taking a kind of general and panoramic view of the whole of human history up to now. And the Almighty said to me, Martin Luther King, which age would you like to live in? I would take my mental flight by Egypt. And I would watch God's children in their magnificent trek from the dark dungeons of Egypt through, or rather across the Red Sea, through the wilderness on toward the Promised Land. And in spite of its magnificence, I wouldn't stop there. I would move on by Greece and take my mind to Mount Olympus. And I would see Plato, Aristotle, Socrates, Euripides, and Aristophanes assemble around the Parthenon. And I would watch them around the Parthenon as they discussed the great and eternal issues of reality, but I wouldn't stop there. I would go on even to the great heyday of the Roman Empire. And I would see developments around there through various emperors and leaders, but I wouldn't stop there. I would even come up to the day of the Renaissance and get a quick picture of all that the Renaissance did for the cultural and aesthetic life of man, but I wouldn't stop there. I would even go by the way that the man for whom I'm named had his habitat. And I would watch Martin Luther as he tacks his 95 Theses on the door at the Church of Wittenberg, but I wouldn't stop there. I would come on up even to 1863 and watch a vacillating president by the name of Abraham Lincoln finally come to the conclusion that he had to sign the Emancipation Proclamation, but I wouldn't stop there. I would even come up to the early 30s and see a man grappling with the problems of the bankruptcy of his nation and come with an eloquent cry that we have nothing to fear but fear itself, but I wouldn't stop there. Strangely enough, I would turn to the Almighty and say, if you allow me to live just a few years in the second half of the 20th century, I will be happy. Now, that's a strange statement to make because the world is all messed up. The nation is sick. Trouble is in the land, confusion all around. That's a strange statement. But I know somehow that only when it is dark enough can you see the stars. And I see God working in this period of the 20th century in a way that men in some strange way are responding. Something is happening in our world. The masses of people are rising up, and wherever they are assembled today, whether they are in Johannesburg, South Africa, Nairobi, Kenya, Accra, Ghana, New York City, Atlanta, Georgia, Jackson, Mississippi, or Memphis, Tennessee, the cry is always the same: we want to be free. And another reason that I'm happy to live in this period is that we have been forced to a point where we're going to have to grapple with the problems that men have been trying to grapple with through history, but the demands didn't force them to do it. Survival demands that we grapple with them. Men for years now have been talking about war and peace, but now no longer can they just talk about it. It is no longer the choice between violence and nonviolence in this world. It's nonviolence or non-existence. That is where we are today. And also in the human rights revolution, if something isn't done and done in a hurry to bring the colored people to the world out of their long years of poverty, their long years of hurt and neglect, the whole world is doomed. Now, I'm just happy that God has allowed me to live in this period to see what is unfolding. And I'm happy that He's allowed me to be in Memphis. I can remember when Negroes were just going around as Ralph has said so often, scratching where they didn't itch and laughing when they were not tickled. But that day is all over. We mean business now, and we are determined to gain our rightful place in God's world. And that's all this whole thing is about. We aren't engaged in any negative protest and in any negative arguments with anybody. We are saying that we are determined to be men. We are determined to be people. We are saying that we are God's children. And that we are God's children, we don't have to live like we are forced to live. Now, what does all of this mean in this great period of history? It means that we've got to stay together. We've got to stay together and maintain unity. You know, whenever Pharaoh wanted to prolong the period of slavery in Egypt, he had a favorite formula for doing it. What was that? He kept the slaves fighting among themselves. But whenever the slaves get together, something happens in Pharaoh's court, and he cannot hold the slaves in slavery. When the slaves get together, that's the beginning of getting out of slavery. Now let us maintain unity. Secondly, let us keep the issues where they are. The issue is injustice. The issue is the refusal of Memphis to be fair and honest in its dealings with its public servants who happen to be sanitation workers. Now we've got to keep attention on that. That's always the problem with a little violence. You know what happened the other day, and the press dealt only with the window breaking. I read the article. They very seldom got around to mentioning the fact that 1,300 sanitation workers are on strike, and that Memphis is not being fair to them, and that Mayor Loeb is in dire need of a doctor. They didn't get around to that. Now we're going to march again, and we've got to march again in order to put the issue where it is supposed to be. And force everybody to see that there are 1,300 of God's children here suffering. Sometimes going hungry, going through dark and dreary nights, wondering how this thing is going to come out. That's the issue. And we've got to say to the nation, we know how it's coming out. For when people get caught up with that which is right and they are willing to sacrifice for it, there is no stopping point short of victory. We aren't going to let any may stop us. We are masters in our nonviolent movement in disarming police forces. They don't know what to do. I've seen them so often. I remember in Birmingham, Alabama, when we were in that majestic struggle there, we would move out of the 16th Street Baptist Church day after day. By the hundreds, we would move out, and Bull Connor would tell them to send the dogs forth. And they did come. But we just went before the dogs singing, ain't gonna let nobody turn me around. Bull Connor next would say, turn the fire hoses on. As I said to you the other night, Bull Connor didn't know history. He knew a kind of physics that somehow didn't relate to the trans-physics that we knew about. And that was the fact that there was a certain kind of fire that no water could put out. And we went before the fire hoses. We had known water. If we were Baptist or some other denomination, we had been immersed. If we were Methodist and some others, we had been sprinkled, but we knew water. That couldn't stop us. And we just went on before the dogs, and we would look at them, and we'd go on before the water hoses, and we would look at it, and we just go on singing, over my head, I see freedom in there. And then we would be thrown into paddy wagons, and sometimes we would stack in there like sardines in a can. They would throw us in, and old Bull would say, take them off. And they did, and we would just go on in the paddy wagon singing, we shall overcome. And every now and then we'd get in jail, and we'd see the jailers looking through the windows, being moved by our prayer and being moved by our words and our song. And there was a power there which Bull Connor couldn't adjust to. And so we ended up transforming Bull into a steer, and we won our struggle in Birmingham. Now we've got to go on in Memphis just like that. I call upon you to be with us when we go out Monday. Now about injunction. We have an injunction, and we are going into court tomorrow morning to fight this illegal, unconstitutional injunction. All we say to America is be true to what you said on paper. If I lived in China or even Russia or any totalitarian country, maybe I could understand some of these illegal injunctions. Maybe I could understand the denial of certain basic First Amendment privileges because they haven't committed themselves to that over there. But somewhere I read of the freedom of assembly. Somewhere I read of the freedom of speech. Somewhere I read of the freedom of press. Somewhere I read that the greatness of America is the right to protest for rights. And so just as I say we aren't going to let any dog or water hoses turn us around, we aren't going to let any injunction turn us around. We are going on. We need all of you. You know what's beautiful to me? Is to see all of these ministers of the gospel. It's a marvelous picture. Who is it that is supposed to articulate the longings and aspirations of the people more than the preacher? Somehow the preacher must have a kind of fire shut up in his bones. And whenever injustice is around, he must tell it. Somehow the preacher must be an Amos who said, when God speaks, who can but prophesy? Again, with Amos, let justice roll down like waters and righteousness like a mighty stream. Somehow the preacher must say with Jesus, the Spirit of the Lord is upon me because he has anointed me. And he's anointed me to deal with the problems of the poor. And I want to commend the preachers under the leadership of these noble men. James Lawson, one who has been in this struggle for many years. He's been to jail for struggling. He's been kicked out of Vanderbilt University for this struggling, but he's still going on fighting for the rights of his people. Reverend Ralph Jackson, Billy Kyle, I could just go right on down the list. Time will not permit, but I want to thank all of them. And I want you to.
All right, y'all. So I'm sorry to cut that speech off halfway through. We did get halfway through. If y'all want to listen to it, I will put the links in the description box of, my video, and y'all can watch the full speech. Just for, time purposes, I don't want to hold y'all up too long and play these videos for too long. I will cut that one down there and stop that right at the halfway mark, just like the others. We have to get into the final one, which is Bernice King, the daughter of Martin Luther King Jr., who has spoke out on today on MLK Jr. Day. And I wanted to play some of what she has to say as well in her beautiful speech. We'll go ahead and play a quick song, and then we'll get into that video, and then we will wrap up this live. But thank you all so much for coming in and listening and staying to listen to it all. If you did from beginning to end, I appreciate it, and MLK Jr. appreciates it. And the message is an important message, and we all, if we know, we know. That's all I can say. But let me go ahead and get into this quick little short song, and then we'll get into her speech, and we'll end with a bop as well.
Thank you. Now, this is the day that the Lord has made. We ought to all rejoice and be glad in it. Let the redeemed of the Lord say so in this place. Hallelujah. You may be seated. On behalf of the King Center, welcome you to the 2026 Beloved Community Commemorative Service. I want to thank all of my King Center staff and team and volunteers for all the work they put into bringing forth an extraordinary week of activities, including today's commemorative service and our community service project. So thank you so much from the bottom of my heart. Love you deeply and dearly. Thank you, Ebenezer, for opening your doors, Pastor Warnock, once again to us. We gather in this sacred space again to commemorate the life, the legacy, and the liberating love of my father, the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. On what would have been his 97th birthday and the 41st observance of the national holiday, 41 years in. And I dare to say and declare, and we ain't going nowhere. We do so at a time when the world is trembling under the weight of its own contradictions, a time when inhumanity, injustice, and inequity have risen to devastating heights, a time when our nation is fractured by polarization, poisoned by fear, and paralyzed by division. We gather in a moment charged with both peril and promise, a moment when the soul of our nation is crying out, not with a whisper, but with a groan of urgency for healing, for direction, for a way forward that binds our wounds rather than deepens them. We are living in a moral crisis, not symbolic, but so deep. Our humanity is at stake. There is a battle going on between good and evil, and the future of this nation and the world house hangs in the balance. We must decide whether we will continue down the path of fragmentation or rise together into new possibilities of community. But beneath these visible crises lies a deeper affliction, a crisis of conscience and compassion. We scroll through suffering as if flipping through channels. We debate the humanity of our neighbors as if dignity were a commodity.
What if you can create your own website by saying, this is what I want? With Wix, you can. First up, let's talk about AI color scheme.
Fear has become the currency of power. Anger is spoken more fluently than love. Hope is fading into a faint echo. And people are losing faith, yes, in institutions, in one another, in themselves, and even in God. We're divided not only by ideology, but by imagination, unable to imagine a future together. This moment demands more than memory, it demands movement. More than admiration, it demands action. More than commemoration, it demands commitment. Because the forces tearing at our shared humanity are not waiting. Nationalism, extremism, and imperialism are not waiting. The erosion of democracy is not waiting. The massacring of civilians is not waiting. Children pulled from rubble in Gaza, Sudan, Congo, Ukraine, and Haiti are not waiting. Oligarchy masquerading as democracy is not waiting. The normalization of dehumanization, disinformation, and violence is not waiting. Wars raging abroad and in our streets are not waiting. Economic inequality widening day by day is not waiting. Climate disasters devastating homes and hearts are not waiting. Human rights norms being ignored or selectively applied are not waiting. So neither can we wait. This is the hour when truth must be louder than fear, This is the hour when courage must be stronger than convenience. This is the hour when love must be more disciplined than anger. This is the hour when we choose the way that leads to life. That way is the nonviolent way, the love-centered Kingian way, the way that honors the dignity of every person, even adversaries, that resist the forces dividing us through ideology and identity, partisanship and propaganda. The nonviolent way insists we cannot build a future apart from one another. We must build a future rooted in justice and compassion. My father often reminded us that we are caught in an inescapable network of mutuality, tied in a single garment of destiny. What affects one directly affects all of us indirectly. And so you cannot cancel that garment. You cannot sever that network. I cannot be all that I ought be until you are all that you ought be. Because I am because you are, and you are because I am. When we see people strictly as others, strictly as enemy, strictly as disposable, we react rather than respond. We retaliate rather than restore. We dehumanize rather than dignify. And when we dehumanize, we destroy the very possibility of community. That is why nonviolence is not simply a way. It is the way that heals, transforms, and leads us toward the beloved community. Yet decade after decade, we've resisted the shift in thinking, speaking, acting, and engaging that nonviolence requires. We have confined it to marches and protests, but nonviolence is not a tactic. It is a way of life, a spiritual discipline, and a moral mandate. Einstein said, we cannot solve our problems on the same level of thinking that we created them. America was born in violence. We're gonna have to solve it through nonviolence. Nonviolence lifts us to a higher plane where love guides logic and compassion directs courage. The problems we face today are not only political or economic, they are moral and spiritual problems, rooted in the erosion of good. And when a society grows suspicious of good or punishes good, the society is in danger. We saw this danger in the tragic killing of Renee Nicole Good. Her death was not just a physical tragedy. We've seen many of those. We've experienced too many of those. It was a moral indictment, a spiritual alarm, a prophetic sign that good, the very thing we need most, is being crucified in our midst. Good deeds dismissed, good intentions mocked, good people targeted, good vision suffocated before they can breathe.
Is private student loan debt wrecking your life? You really need to talk to Why Refi. Why Refi?
Her story forces us to confront a painful truth. Goodness itself is endangered. And that's why nonviolence is not optional. Nonviolence protects good. It restores good. It multiplies good. Nonviolence is how we guard the good, grow the good, and refuse to let the world normalize the killing of good in our streets, in our systems, in our speech, and in our spirits. As we confront the killing of good, we must also confront the killing of truth. The recent claim by President Trump that the 1964 Civil Rights Act harmed white Americans is just wrong, and it's dangerous. It rewrites history in a way that fuels fear and resentment. My fathers and so many leaders of the movement Fred Shuttlesworth, Diane Nash, John Lewis, I can call the roll, but I won't do it today, did not risk their lives to divide this nation. They did not risk their lives to divide this nation. They did so because America was denying millions basic rights, the right to work, the right to vote, to live where they please, to move through society with dignity. The Civil Rights Act did not give black people special treatment. It made discrimination illegal. The same discrimination you're trying to turn around and use. It required the law to protect everyone equally. That is democracy. So to my white brothers and sisters, the Civil Rights Act was never meant to harm you. It was meant to heal a nation broken by injustice. Fairness does not steal from you. Justice strengthens us all. And so we must not fall for the politics of fear, the lie that we must choose between one another to thrive. America is stronger when more people are included, when we are united in respect and love, not when we retreat in fear. The beloved community is not built by blaming one another. It's built by protecting the dignity of everyone. And so, on this King holiday, we are not going backwards. We are not going backwards. We can't go back, because we've come too far. And I don't believe that God brought us this far to leave us. There might be setbacks and even setups, but with God on our side, we will step up and stand up for what is right, what is just, and what is true. As my father prophetically said on April 3rd, 1968, we've got some difficult days ahead. But it really doesn't matter with me now, because I've been to the mountaintop. God's allowed me to look over and see the promised land. And I may not get there with you, with us today, but we as a people will get to the promised land. And so if no billy club, no biting dogs, no water hoses, no cattle prods could stop them or turn them around, then no ice or ice rays will turn us around. It will not turn us around or freeze our efforts to protest, because as Daddy said, the greatness of America is the right to protest for right. No DEI removals or DEI bans will break our resolve to create a just, equitable, and inclusive society. We will rise because the hour demands it. We will stand because truth requires it. We will act because justice compels it. We will build because the future depends on it. We will become because our children deserve nothing less. We will rise not with domination, but with dignity. We will stand not on fear, but on moral courage. We will act not out of rage, but out of love, the fierce enough to confront and tender enough to heal. We will build not monuments to division, but pathways to shared destiny. We will become not what history has tried to make us, but what God created us to be. So let it be said on this 2026 King holiday of us that we commemorated the dream, but that we carried it. Not that we admired a legacy, but we lived it. Not that we waited for justice, but we walked toward it with courage, with clarity and conviction. And by God's grace, we will rise. We will stand. We will act. We will build community and unite a nation the nonviolent way, the higher plane of emotional intelligence, strategic clarity, spiritual stamina, and spiritual love, the higher plane of responding without reacting, of confronting without condemning, of resisting without retaliating, of building without breaking. The mission is possible. So walk together, children. Don't you get weary. Work together, children. Don't you get weary. Struggle together and hold on together, children. Don't you get weary. Mobilize and organize and strategize together, children. Don't you get weary. Fuss, fight, but get over it together, children. And don't you get weary. But don't forget to pray together, children, or you will get weary. So walk together, children. And I do believe in my heart, deep in my heart, that one day we shall overcome.
Great to be here.
All right, y'all. So what a powerful speech. Very, very powerful. Just like y'all was saying in the comments, I love to hear her voice. I love to hear her preach. And wow, she really has taken, and walking in the footsteps of her father. And I think that's a beautiful thing for us to witness and see, especially on a day like today, in honor of him. What a wonderful speech. And there was more. There was a whole sermon, and if you guys want to go out and find that, I can put that in my description box for you as well, where you can find her, preaching and listen to some of her sermons online. She is very powerful in her speech. But for our history lesson today and our honorary video today, that is all that I have as far as content. So I am going to go ahead and end this here in just a moment. I will leave us with a little bop, a little song. And I just want to say, overall, when we think of the history and, people who have fought for us to have the freedoms that we have, for us to live the way we live, to have the comfortability the way we live, we got to give thanks to those people. Not just God. God comes first. We all know that. But there's people that put their lives on the line and dedicated their lives to fight for injustices and fight for rights and laws and regulations to make things easier for individuals to live and walk amongst this earth in times where there was no fairness. And so when we honor and we spend a day, a holiday, which is not just, you get off work, you're out of school, we really need to pay attention to the history of what these days represent, who the day is for. And I hope people know that. I hope they celebrate that. And I hope that they take that to their heart, that there are activists out here now, but there were activists out there then fighting deeply for the day that we live, for the life that we live right now. And it probably wouldn't have been possible if it wasn't for their fight and it wasn't for their sacrifice. And so I believe that we should give these people at least a bit of our time, to give them thanks. Give them thanks. They're no longer here with us. They're resting in peace up in heaven with God, is what I believe in my heart. But we need to give them thanks, and we need to pay attention to what it is they were fighting for. Because I'll tell you, history tends to repeat itself. And we may have to go through these fights all over again. And guess what? They're not here with us. So what do? We pick up the baton and we run with it. We run with it based off of some of the principles that they spoke on and they fought for, and maybe some of the new ones that we feel as though we need to speak about and fight for. That's how we get to a different tomorrow. That's how we, construct a different tomorrow for our children, for our nephews, for our nieces, for our cousins, for our grandchildren. We have to put in that effort to bring that said change so we can see a world and we can see a life that's different from what we're experiencing for the future. That's what they did. That's what we do. We should continue to follow in those footsteps in that path. And so I just want to say happy MLK Jr. Day to everyone. I hope you continue to have a good rest of the day, afternoon, evening, night, whatever respectful time zone you're in. Thank you so much for tuning in to the live. Maybe you learned something. Maybe you already knew. I appreciate all of your presence here on this live today. We're going to go ahead and end it. We're at the 2-hour mark. Of course, we'll end it with a bop or a few bops. Let's get a few bops in because we want to bring hope and light and strength to the people. Because as dim and bleak as it may seem, we shall overcome. Anyway, y'all, thank y'all for joining me. I'll talk to you on the next live. I'm out. Bye.
We shall overcome. Through the fire and the rain, we still run. We shall overcome. They can't eclipse the light of the sun. Deep in my heart, I still believe we shall overcome someday. Right. Deep in my heart, I do believe that we shall overcome someday. Just a ticking clock and a dark sip pad. But someday feels like it's slipping away. 2020's fixed and we're back in the fray. Yo, look, it's 2026 and the cycle is vicious. They're erasing the progress, making us suspicious. Rolling back the DII, cutting the light, targeting the cities in the middle of the night. I see the ice ages moving through the Twin Cities. Another life lost, no mercy, no pity. They say merit-based, but we know the code. It's a heavy weight, it's a long dark road. They're taking King's name, but they're killing the dream. Dismantling the systems, or so it would seem. From the border to the block, the tension is rising, but the spirit of the people, man, is still now. Lift every voice and sing till earth and heaven ring. Ring with the harmonies of liberty. Let it ring out loud. Let our rejoicing rise high as the listening skies. Let it resound loud as the rolling sea. Like the mighty waters. Sing a song full of the faith that the dark past has taught us. We remember it all. Sing a song full of the hope that the present has brought us. Hope is alive, yeah. Facing the rising sun of our new day begun. Let us march on. Let's keep marching till victory is won. Stony the road we trod. Bitter the casting rock. But we're still here. To the right place. Welcome to the rain. Golden Queen. H2.0. Let's get it. You're looking for a diamond, found a treasure in the rough. Tired of all the noise, cause you finally had enough. I'm here to build a movement on a mission for the nation. Dropping gems of knowledge, killing all the hesitation. We fighting for the truth, yeah, we fighting for what's right. Building unity and shining up a brand new light. It's a variety channel, but the vision's crystal clear. Pushing us all forward, conquering the doubt and fear.
Yo, welcome to the Queendom. H2.0 on your screen, with the content's real and smart and funny in between. This is more than just a stream, it's a platform for the change. Time to elevate the game and rearrange. So if you're ready for a vibe that you can feel and trust, joining in the movement is a definite must. This ain't just another channel talking smack behind the screen. It's a spotlight for the creators, building up of the scene. Spreading radical love, that's the message in the code. Helping everybody carry up a heavy load. From social justice issues to the laughter that we need. Planting seeds of progress, watch them grow from just a seed. This is authentic, this is raw, this is everything you saw. Welcome to the battle that is truly being fought. Oh, so come with your respect and see the real effect. Cause I protect my own right here on the throne. Don't make me unleash the dragon. You've been warned.
Yeah. Don't make me unleash the dragon. You've been warned. Yeah. Don't make me unleash the dragon. You've been warned. Yeah. Yeah. Golden Queen H2.0.
The movement starts now. Go ahead. Hit subscribe, ring that notification bell. You don't want to miss a thing. Welcome to the family.